Watch this, I'll generate a fully formatted blog post in seconds. And with just one more click, it's live on WordPress. No manual writing, no copy pasting, just AI doing the heavy lifting for you. By the end of this video, you'll have your own AI-powered blog post generator that writes and posts for you, freeing up your time and boosting your content output effortlessly. And here's how we'll do it. First, we'll set up an AI-powered blog generator. Then we'll automate the publishing process to WordPress. And finally, I'll show you how to tweak it for your niche or business. Imagine this, you wake up, check your website and see fresh, high quality blog posts live without lifting a finger. More traffic, more engagement, and more business, all on autopilot. But if you're still writing blog posts manually, spending hours crafting content and struggling to post consistently, you're wasting time. AI can do this in seconds. So why not let it work for you? Well, let's dive in and build it. All right, so let's build out the automation, and therefore we're going to use this interface that we built, and you can just copy the entire interface and database so that you don't have to set all of that up and focus only on the automation part of the whole this application that we're going to build. The first thing that we're going to need is a niches page. So we have different niches here that we can set up. So I have one niche only, and we can create ideas for a given niche. All right, so maybe you have multiple different niches that you want to post about. You could set them up here, just clicking on this plus button, create a niche, and then you will have it here. Then once you click on generate idea on this little button, it will trigger an automation. And we're going to look at the automations a little later. We're going to build all of them out. So these are the automations that we need to look at and build out. Some of them are a little more complicated, but not too much. So don't worry about it, even though it's so many. It's just going to be rather simple ones, like this one, for example, is really a very simple automation. You see here, it just consists of a webhook, 2 Airtable modules, as well as a WordPress module. Okay, so don't worry about that. However, coming back to this point, so once we clicked on this button, an automation ran and it came up with an idea. So for example, transforming small business operations, a step-by-step guide to AI-powered workflow automation using Airtable and Make. So based on my details that I gave in the niches, it generated this idea. This is the title of the idea, and here are some, well, here is a description for the article. So you can make changes to it if you want to. However, once you're happy with it, you can just click on good idea. This will trigger another automation, which will then go and generate the blog content. So it will just set it up down here, transforming small business operations. Then we can generate the content structure. So we can just click on this button. This will then also take a few seconds. But then once that is done, we can generate an image for the content. And then we can generate the final post content as well as draft it and publish it. So it is a few buttons that we need to click. However, you could obviously also leave those buttons out and create an automation that basically from the idea generates the entire content and uploads it straight away. However, I don't like the idea too much because I want to be in control of the different steps. I want to have control over the image that will be used. I want to have control over the keywords that will be used, as well as the summary. So there we are, it was created for us. So here are going to be the keywords that we are going to focus on for our article. Here's the summary of the article. A little difficult to read, don't worry about that. So now that we have those things, so the article name, the keywords, the summary, we can click on generate image. This will then trigger another automation, which will then add an image in here. And you can also drop your own images in here if you don't want to use AI generated images for your blog posts. And then once we get the image, which will take roughly 15 seconds or so, there we are, we got our image. And this is the image that was generated for us. Then we can click on create final post content. So I'm going to say I want to include the image in the post, and I'm going to create the post content, so to speak. And we will also generate a preview for our content. So this will basically generate the HTML text, so to speak, for our entire content, and we'll add it down here. So this will be another PNG or image that will be added here in a second. And there we are. So this is the content that was generated for us. You see, it looks pretty nice with different steps, with breakdowns and everything. Even FAQs at the end, so pretty long article. And we even got our preview. So this is how the article will be in terms of image and text. Now, obviously it will look a little nicer once we post it. So we can create the post draft by clicking on this button. And what that will do is it will create a post inside of our WordPress website. So here in my case, it created this post here, transforming small business operations, step-by-step guide. There we are. So this is our blog post that was created for us. And once we are happy with it, we can just go ahead and publish the post. We can either publish it from here. Obviously, we could have also published it directly from WordPress. We could have made a few changes here if we wanted to. However, I think this does look pretty nice. And once we did click on publish, we could have done it here. But as I said, we also wanted to have the capability directly in the user interface. Then we will see that this post actually has been published. All right, so it is published on my website here, transforming small business operations. Here's the title again. Well, there's a collector of email addresses. Then we have the image, and here is our entire article. Pretty in-depth article, pretty nice, and that's it. So let's build out the automation step by step together. Therefore, the first thing that you will need to do is you will need to go to the URL that I'm going to share with you while being logged in. So if you are logged in, you will find this copy base button. So once you click on this button, it will copy the entire base into your workspace. So you need to make sure that you select the workspace that you have a paid Airtable account in, or that is a paid account. And then you will find that the database is filled with data. So let's just delete the existing, well, let's leave it in there just to look at the interfaces here. So you will go to interfaces and you will see that the interface is filled with data. So all of it is here. Now, if you go back to your blog post automation here and we go to view data, I'm just going to delete all the data for now, delete all selected content as well as the blog content. I'm going to delete that as well. And well, actually all of it. And in terms of niches, I'm going to leave the niche in here. Now you will see whenever you are copying your, a base from somebody else, the automations will not be there. So we will need to build out the automations together. But don't worry about it. We're going to do everything from scratch. So the first thing that we want to build out is this generate idea over here. So once we click on this button, what we want to happen is we want an automation to be triggered. And the automation will be, first of all, an Airtable automation. So let me get rid of all of these. It will be here when we go to view data inside of automations. It will automate something from here. So we have the automations directly in Airtable, but we also have the automations that are inside of our make.com. So let's build all of them out. So the first thing will be to generate an idea when a button is pressed. So we click on add trigger here. Then we select when a button is pressed here, or when a button is clicked. And then we need to select the source. Now we cannot select the source from here. We need to select it from our interface, so to speak. So here we can also go to edit pages. And here, when we click on this generate idea, we can select the automation, which we just created, which was automation 1. Now at this point, it will not work. We need to publish it real quick to make the changes accessible or work so that they work. We can turn it on once it works. We can then go ahead and say what should happen once we do click on the button. And what I want to happen is I want to run a script. And the script that I want to run will be the following. It's very simple code. Let me just paste it in here. It's always the same code, right? We get the input config, which we get from the inputs right here. So we will need to set up input variables. The first one will be the record ID, which we get from here. So we just select this Airtable record ID, and then we need to set up the webhook URL. Now, if you are wondering where this comes from and how this whole thing is built, then check out my video on webhooks. And I went into this in depth where I really explained specifically what all of this here means, how this works and so forth. So now we will need to create the make automation that should give us this webhook URL that we want to trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my make and I'm going to create a new scenario. Okay, and we will start with webhooks. So we're going to call a custom webhook. I'm going to add a new webhook and I'm going to call this one generate idea blog post webhook. or something like that, something descriptive. Okay, so then we now have a URL. We can copy this to clipboard, click on this button, and we can go over here and add this URL in here. So once we're done, we can finish editing. We can give this automation a proper name. So we rename this automation, and I'm going to call this one generate idea. Okay, generate idea. All right, so then let's turn this automation on. Once this automation is turned on, we should find that this button turns green. Okay, there we are. So now we have this webhook. Let's save this webhook here, and let's rename this automation to something more meaningful. And I'm going to give it the name of blog automation part 1, generating ideas for the blog. Okay, so this will be the name. Now let me run this automation once with this webhook. So we have nothing else yet, but we will add more stuff there. Then once we click on this generate idea button, this webhook should be triggered. So let's see if that's actually going to happen, because we did connect them through the automations, right? And there we are, it did work. So we got the record ID here. What is this record ID? Well, it is the record ID coming from the table. Can't find it here. We will find it here. If we go into edit pages and we click on this button, we will see that it runs this automation with the record detail, generate idea automation. And well, we should find it in here when we click on the button. Yeah, there we are. So it will have the source of niches, or the niche, and it will come in. Well, it comes from this interface inbox record detail, which is this interface here. And once we click this button, then this automation is triggered, and this automation triggers this make automation. Okay, and now we can go ahead and do something with it. We can get the record from our Airtable, and therefore we will need to select or add a connection to our Airtable here. And therefore I'm going to select Airtable OAuth. I'm going to call this one blog post connection, something like this. Okay, save. And then I'll need to authorize with Airtable. So you need to be logged in, and there you need to select your table, this one here, blog automation v1. Okay, and you need to grant access. So once you grant access to your Airtable, you should have access to the connection, and then you should be able to select the base. So we have one base, which is this blog automation v1, and then we need to select the niche table, and we're going to pass in the record ID. All right, so here we get the record ID from this webhook, and we pass it to our Airtable. So let's run this automation once again, and we click on this generate idea button. This will then trigger this automation, send the webhook ID from here, or the record ID from here, to Airtable, which will then allow us to get the record from Airtable. And the record that we are interested in, let's look at the data, is this one here. So this ID, you see here, well, specifically this record ID. So it will give us this niche, AI automation. There we are. We see it gave us the niche name AI automation with Airtable and make, and so forth. Just to test whether this works with other niches as well, let's create another niche. So I'm going to call this one test 1, test 1, test 1, and create. And then while we are inside of test 1, let's click on generate idea. Well, we need to make sure that this is running as well. So I'm going to click run once. I was fast enough. If you aren't as fast, it will be different, but now it should say test 1. Okay, perfect. So this worked. Now we can build out our idea, and therefore we need to use OpenAI. So we need to create a completion here, and the prompt that I'm going to give it is going to be rather simple. So I'm going to do a completion. I'm going to use O1 mini here. Now this might change a little bit depending on when you watch it, look at this. So once it is loaded, I'm going to select the user connection, or this add message. I'm going to select user, and then I'm going to paste in this content right here. So it says generate a unique and engaging blog idea, provide only one idea per request, make sure it is specific, intriguing, and not overly broad. It should be suitable for an audience and have the potential to attract readers. Avoid generic topics and focus on fresh creative angles. And the content should be for the following niche. And here we need to select the niche name. And for the following niche details, and here we select the niche details and have this content style, which we select the content style for it. And then it says the output should be in JSON format given below. This is then the output that I want to have. So I want the title and the description. By the way, you could obviously improve this prompt. So the audience, maybe we give more details about the audience based on the niche or something like that. You can obviously improve this to your liking. And also you will obviously need to have an OpenAI connection. So you will need to click on add and then set up your OpenAI key. So if you want to know more about it, you can click on this link here and you can set up your OpenAI key. Okay, I'm just assuming that you have seen any other AI automation videos of mine where this is set up. So once you have that, we can go ahead and create a record inside of Airtable. So here we select Airtable, we say create, and let's actually use the same connection that we used earlier, blog post connection. So I'm gonna use that as well here, blog post connection. Now this time we need to add additional permissions. So there are two different types of permissions. There is the read access and then there is the write access. And here we are giving write access. So I'm granting the access to write records to my database and not just read. This is really important from a database perspective. So either you can just read or you can also write and update. So then you need to select your base as well as the table. And this was the niche, I believe. Let me quickly check. No, actually this was blog content idea. Here we need to create an idea and the title should be the result that we get from our ChatGPT prompt. Okay, before we can finish this statement here, we need to make some minor changes to our ChatGPT settings here. So we need to make sure that we click on show advanced settings and then we need to activate response format. And the response format should be JSON object. Okay, so I don't want it to be just text. I want it to be JSON response. So I'm gonna say yes here, parse the JSON response as well. And now when we run this module only, let's test it for AI automation and chill style, stuff like that. So let's just test it for this. And I will run into an error. Response format of type JSON is not supported with this model. That's because they made changes since I prepared this. Man, these people. So here, GPT and GPT models. So O1 mini system doesn't seem to want to give us what we want. So instead, I'm going to use GPT-4o latest here. And once I do that, then I should be able to select parsing and the JSON output. So JSON object parsing. Okay, let's run this again. This module only, AI automation, and chill style. Let's run it. And this should then give us an output that is title and description. So perfect. We got two different outputs. This is because it parsed the JSON. So if you don't know what parsing in JSON is, definitely check out my series on parsing in JSON as well. All right, so there we are. And now I should be able to select the title. For some reason, it doesn't work. So let me delete this module and set it up once again. Here, create a record inside of our blog post connection, inside of our blog automation. And then we create a blog content idea and we get the title. Now it works. Now it displays the title for me and the description as well. And I'm gonna set the status to be, well, we don't have statuses here. I'm gonna set it to not reviewed, and the niche I'm gonna set to the record ID from our webhook down here. Okay, and with that we should be done. So let's save that and let's run this automation once. Let's go over here and generate an idea, but not for test, but for AI automation. So let me generate the idea. This should trigger this automation and then also lead to a post inside of our automation interface. Okay, there we are, generates it and stores it. Okay, so let's see what was created for us. And we see mastering AI-driven workflow automation, integrating Airtable and Make for maximum efficiency. So this was the idea that was generated for us. The status is not reviewed. And now what we want to do is once we click on good idea, we want this to be created, this automation to be created. Okay, so therefore we will need to go over here Well, let's check out the database. We see there is an entry here in our database. And now we want to do the next thing, which is to create blog content out of it. Therefore, we're going to create another automation, and let's add one here, create automation. This one will be triggered when a record matches condition. So what we want is inside of our blog content idea table, we're going to say when the status is set to good idea, then we want to trigger an automation and we want to create a new record. So the new record that I want to create will be inside of our table blog content, and the field will be article name, and the field content, so after we selected article name, will be from here where we have title. And then we're going to have another field which will be status. So I'm going to select status here, and I'm going to say pending structure generation as the field here. And that would be it. Okay, so let's turn on this automation and see if it's actually going to do what we want it to do. So here, when I select good idea, I want it to generate a new entry. So here we can see that it will generate a new blog content entry. So let's go over to blog content and see if it did generate one. So there we are. It generated a new entry called, inside of blog entry with the same name that we had for the blog idea. You see here, same name, but now generated it in a separate table. So this table is specifically responsible for generating the content structure as well as the post itself, and draft it as well as post it. Okay, so that's what we want to do in here. So if we look at our database here, we will see that inside of blog content, there is this new post, right? It has a status and it has this article name. This is the automation that we just built here. Okay, so that's how you can duplicate or like create new content inside of separate tables when something else happens, like a trigger, for example, when you create a new status, which is pretty useful. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create the content structure. So when this button here is clicked, we want something to happen, which means we want, well, the whole content to be prepared, so to speak. So let's go ahead and create a new automation for just that. So I'm going to call this one create content structure. And by the way, while we are changing names, let's change the name of this automation one, and let's call it selecting good idea and create new record in blog table. All right, pretty long name for an automation, but it's very descriptive. It really helps when you have something that is descriptive when it comes to any kind of work with software. So we want to create the content structure, and what we're going to do is we're going to say when a button is clicked, and we will need to select this automation inside of our user interface here. So let's go ahead and click on edit pages again. And here we will need to click on the button on the right hand side, generate content structure, and we need to select our automation. So this create content structure automation that we just created. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and set up this automation. And you see it automatically filled out this information. We couldn't fill this out ourselves manually. We needed to select the button here to run the automation. So we needed to do, I clicked it away, I think. Yeah, no, we needed to select this automation here, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. So now it says the automation isn't turned on. Well, that's because we are not done building the automation yet. So what should happen when we click on this create content structure button? Well, I just want to run a script. So here we're going to run the same script that we run always when we want to run a make automation. So this is what will trigger a make automation. Same logic as always. We create a record ID here. Actually, let's just copy it from here so that we cannot make any typos. And then we select Airtable record. Then we create the webhook URL. And then this is the name, not the value. And as the value, we need to set up the value of our new make automation. By the way, if you don't want to build everything out manually and you want instead to just get the templates and save a lot of time, you can go over to the AI Automation Specialist community. You will find the link underneath this video, and there you can join our amazing community. It's rather new still, so we are not huge yet, but we have a really cool community here with very useful learning materials, such as, well, a masterclass on AI automation with Airtable and Make, as well as some really amazing automations here. So there are templates for all kinds of automations that are really business value automations. So these are not just for fun automations, these are actual automations that you can use for your own business or to sell to other businesses. And then we also have our weekly call where you can ask all your questions, whether it's business questions, AI automation questions, or any Gen AI questions that you have. Maybe also something about how to create amazing courses or how to grow on LinkedIn, how to grow on YouTube, all of these things. I have quite some experience. As you can see here, there's a YouTube button in the background, and I have taught coding to over 500,000 people on Udemy as well. So a bunch of stuff that I can share and help you with. And with that, let's jump back to the video. Obviously, we didn't create a separate make automation yet. So let's save the changes that we had for our other blog post generation here. And let's create another scenario. This one will also do a webhook work, and the automation, it will be a little more advanced this time, just a tiny bit. So let's select custom webhook. Let's give this a name, and I'm going to call this one create content structure webhook. You could write it together. It really doesn't matter too much. Copy this address to clipboard, go over to your automation page inside of Airtable, select value here and paste it in there. Okay, once you're done, click finish editing and turn on this automation. So this time, let's go over here, let's save this, and let's give this automation a more descriptive name, okay? And let's run this once just to see if the webhook works before we do anything else. And let's see if this automation also works, right? So do you recall when this automation will be triggered? It will be triggered once we click on this generate content structure button, okay? So now that it is blue and not uncolored anymore or gray, we can click on this button and this should trigger this automation. But in order to trigger this automation was triggered as well. So we clicked on this button and then we ran this script, which then runs this, well, calls this webhook and sends us the record ID. So this is the record ID of what? Of the niche? No, of the, let me see, content, block content. Okay, so now we are inside of block content. If we look at our table here, it's this one. So it will be this ID. Let's check it. Let's see the record ID. So in case you're wondering how to get the record ID, you can select the formula here and enter record ID and select it from down here, close the brackets, create fields, and this will be the record ID. Let's see if this is the same. We see it is the same, 5GOKSF. That's the same number that we have here, 5GOKSF. Good. So we know that we get this detail. So this article name here. Now we need to build the structure. So let's build out our content structure. Therefore, what I want is, I want to have the keywords, I want to have the summary of facts and figures, and I want to have 20 long tail keywords, okay, in order to then write the article. So therefore, I need to get a record first. So we will get the record using our blog post connection. Okay, I believe that's the one that we used last time. Let me just make sure that that's actually the case. So let me go into scenarios and let's see that we are using the same that we used before. So this one, and we used blog post connection. Okay, so let's use the same one here for our second automation. So I, by the way, changed the name to of my automation so that I can distinguish them, because I'm using the same name, which you shouldn't do, but you shouldn't have this problem as I do. So let me open the automation that we are currently building, which is the operation, this one here, blog generation content structure. So here I need to select the right connection, coming back to that. And I'm selecting the blog post connection. That was the one that we created for YouTube. And then we select the blog automation v1 base, as well as the table blog content like so. And then the record ID we get from our webhook. All right. So at this point, there are multiple different things that you could do. So you could either go ahead and do what I'm doing now with ChatGPT, or you can do it with Perplexity. So I'm going to use Perplexity here. In order to use Perplexity, you will need to make sure that you have an API key. And I'm just going to use the one that I already have. So otherwise you would obviously need to click on add and set up your API key from there. Okay, so you need to go to Perplexity, have an account there, get the API key from there. So then we need to set up a message. So I'm just gonna say that the content should be generate a list of 10 best SEO keywords for the following topic. And we just get the article name from our Airtable here, provide only the keywords in bullet list and keywords in a bullet list. Do not include any additional information, explanation, intros and outros. Make sure not to output any slashes or other characters that could break a make.com automation. So I'm adding that because it could very well happen. And here as the user, I'm just setting the, as a role, I'm setting the user role. Then I'm going to use another Perplexity completion. This one will be for the summary of facts and figures. So here I'm gonna add another message. The content should be write a brief summary of key facts, figures or insights related to the topic, article name. The summary should contain important statistics, data points and critical points of interest only. Do not include any introductions and conclusions or commentary beyond the requested information. Make sure not to output any slashes or other characters that could break the break a make.com automation. So here I'm selecting the user role as well. And then I'm adding another one that will be for generating the 20 long tail keywords. So another completion with Perplexity AI. I'm adding the content here, generate a list of 20 long tail or related keywords for the topic, article name, provide only the keywords in a bullet list. Do not add any explanations or intros, outros, and so forth. Make sure not to use any slashes and stuff. And here we also need to select the user role. All right, so I'm going to save this automation just so that I don't lose it. And then finally, I'm going to add my Airtable where I'm going to say update the record for our blog post connection. And inside of our base blog automation, inside of blog content, that's where I want to set up the data. And I want to set it up for the record ID, which we get from our webhook. And the things that I want to change is I want to change the status to be pending image generation, because we're done with the structure generation. Then we can have pending image generation, pending code generation, and so forth. Okay, so the keywords should be coming from from this one here. This was there to give us the top 10 best keywords. So I'm gonna say choices for this one. It says number 3, right? It's this one. I'm gonna say choices, and then I'm gonna say message, select message and content. So whatever the output, another 4, oh God, of number 3. So we do choices, message, content. For the summary, I do number 4. So here we have number 4, right? This is this one here. For the summary, I'm going to select the content. So choices, message, content. And for the long tail keywords, I'm going to use number 5. I'm gonna say, it's this one here. I'm gonna say choices, message, content. And let me check. I think that should be it. So let's save that. Let's save this automation and let's run this automation once. So how do we trigger this automation? Do you recall? Well, we go back to our interface. So we said that this automation should be triggered once we click on this button. So now that we have everything that we need to make this button work, let's see if this automation will be triggered. So you see it goes to Perplexity once, twice, and the third time. So here we just get the content here, message, the keywords, the 10 best keywords. Here we get the summary of facts. There we are. These are the facts. And here we get the 20 long tail keywords. Okay, 20 of them. Very good. And then we're storing it inside of Airtable. So let's check out Airtable and see if this was added. And we see the keywords were added, the summary was added, and the long tail keywords were added. Perfect. So at this point, we can go to the next automation. So we are done with number 2. Let's save it. And let's set up the next automation. Therefore, let's go back and save number 1 as well. Let's go over to scenario, create a new scenario. This one will be number 3, which is the image generation part. Now, if you don't want to generate any images, you don't have to. But here I'm going to create another webhook, custom webhook. I'm going to call this one generate image for post YouTube. And the next thing is that we want to generate the image whenever this webhook is triggered, right? So there are different ways to do it. And I'm going to show you another way to do it. So here you see we have a button. And here you see we just have this link. Okay, so this generate image, this is basically just calling a link. So it calls this URL here. And what we can do is we can set it up so that whenever this button is clicked, that this formula is triggered. So we just say on this button, so whenever this generate is clicked, what we want to happen is we want to open a URL. So it's going to open this, concatenate, and then this is the URL that we open, and this is the record ID that we add. So you can copy this or like take a screenshot of this part, throw it to ChatGPT and say, please give me the code from here. Or you can just enter concatenate. So let's actually build it out manually. And what you can do is you can just change this URL here. So we want to use the webhook URL that we got from here. Okay, we want to use this webhook URL. So we're going to copy this to clipboard and we are going to go over here and we're going to paste it in there. And what's important is that we paste all the way up to here. So only this part, not this question mark record ID equal sign. So just the URL, we are replacing it with our own. So you can delete it. And if you see what you see right here, then you click in between those individual hashtag quotes here. And that's where you are pasting it. So that's where you are pasting your own URL, which should be your own URL from here. So this one, but your own, not the one that I got myself. So once you got that, you can save this and you can confirm the change and then publish. Okay, and publish the changes. So now when you are clicking on this button here, then this webhook will be called. So let's run this and just see if this is actually the case. And let me actually save this webhook. Let's run this once and let's go over here. Let's click on generate. This opens a new tab with your webhook URL and you see we actually did get the record ID. So this webhook did in fact trigger. So there are different ways. You could also build a button there. That's also an option. And something that you must consider in order to make this work, this generate image, we need to have the content structure. So if you made this a button and made sure that you have a confirm button as well, then it would be easier for the user to actually follow your instructions. So let me show you what I mean with this. So here, when we go to edit pages and we click on this button, you have this option where you say require confirmation. And then this part here pops up where it says, are you sure? And then it will trigger this message. So here, make sure to not click generate image before you clicked this button. It doesn't really make sense too much, but yeah. And then we say, this is my trigger confirmation message, my confirmation message. All right. And then we can say what the button should say. Yes, I am not going to screw up. I'm going to screw up. But as I said, I will go in a lot more depth once we are working with the Airtable interfaces. So we're going to create an Airtable interfaces course. So this is the confirmation button thingy. So you could obviously change that now so that it also becomes a button, but it's a little more tricky. I'm going to show you, as I said, in the course. So once we have all of that stuff, we want to run an automation. Let's go back to our make automations here and let's build it out. So the one that I want to build out is the image generation. And this will be our part 3. I'm going to call this one image generation YouTube. And what I want to do is I want to use Airtable here. I'm going to get a record and there I'm going to again use our blog post connection and the blog post automation v1, the blog content and the record ID. Okay. Then I will need to create a prompt. So create a completion here and the prompt will be rather simple. I'm just going to say, hey, create an image prompt based on the content. So here I'm just going to say, well, GPT-o latest. And this one is a little more tricky because we're going to use the system or the developer role as well. So we're going to say developer role, developer system with this content. So here we have, you will receive text data and so forth. So you can read through it and you can pause the video each time and copy it from here. Or you can obviously also download everything if you join our school. So then now that we have the developer role, we also need to add the user role. So what are we going to add as the user role? Well, I'm just going to say the summary from my record. Okay, so let's go down and add another message and select user. And then here I want to use summary from my Airtable. That's it. If you're wondering what the user role and the developer role is, that's a good one. We need to make another video about that. So then now that you have your prompt, you can use ChatGPT to generate an image. So I'm just going to say, you know what, whatever the output from our from our other model is going to be. So this one is going to generate the image prompt. This one is going to generate the image. So let's just rename this thing and here rename, and I'm going to call this one generate image prompt. And let's rename this one here as well, generate image, just in case you're wondering what each of those things are doing. And once we got the image, we can store the image inside of our database. Actually, we want to update the database this time. We don't want to create a new record, but to update the record. So let me make sure that we actually select update the record inside of our blog automation v1, inside of the table blog content. And here we need to select the record ID, which we get from our webhook. And then I'm changing the status to, well, I'm deactivating maps so that I can select from here to pending code generation. Then image, I'm going to add an item, which I'm going to get from here, where this will be the URL from generate image from this one, number 4. You can see that here, 4. I'm going to select the URL and the file name. I'm just going to call it whatever the record ID was, .png. All right. So at this point, I believe we can leave the rest as is and we can save it. And this will be our image generation. So let me save this, run this once, go back to our user interface here, click on generate. This should trigger this automation. You see it did trigger it. It generated the prompt for us. So this is the prompt, a computer screen displaying Airtable and Make integration in action, showcasing workflow, blah, 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 and so forth. And then that's where the image is generated. And then this takes a little while. Now, obviously, you can also use other tools to generate images, right? This will not be the nicest image in the world. However, it's this one. So the automation worked. It's not exactly make.com, but yeah, whatever, we got an image. ChatGPT isn't very specific, well, very good at following instructions when it comes to generating images. So I'm just using ChatGPT here to make it easier for you. In my personal case, I have used Flux, which generates significantly better images. But yeah, as I said, I don't want to go too deep into that. So now we got another automation running. So we are happy with that. Let's make sure that this one is active as well. And now we can generate another automation. Okay, so we got our YouTube automation part 3. Let me see if I got the other YouTube automations as well. I didn't turn those on. So this was part 1 and part 2. And now let's go ahead and create a new automation. This one will be our 4th automation, part 4, which will be the one which will actually merge content structure into a single post. So we got all of these different pieces of items that we want to put together into one big post. So therefore, I'm going to create another webhook here, custom webhook, and I'm going to call this one merge all content. And there we are. So we can copy this. And you know what? I'm going to also change the name here. Now let me make sure that I copy this. All right, and now when should this webhook be triggered? Well, it should be triggered the moment that we click on this button here, which says create final post content. All right, how can we activate this button and make it do something? Well, we've seen that multiple times, right? We've seen how that works here with the automation that we build and so forth. So we need to do 2 things. We need to modify this page so that we make sure that we have access to this button. So click into it and then you can select an automation. Now we obviously need to create an automation for it. So we can either click here, create new automation, or we can just do it from here. So I'm going to do it from here because that's where we're going to do it all the time. And this is going to be when a button is clicked once again. Now we don't have a source yet, but now that we have this automation, we can select it. So this will be automation 1. Now, obviously this automation 1 doesn't have a proper name. So I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call this one create final post content. And then I will give it some logic as well. And it will be the same logic as always. We just have our very basic script, and we need to add the record ID like so. And we need to add the webhook URL like so. And the webhook URL itself will be this URL. So in case you don't have it in your copy or in your paste, what is it, thingy anymore, whatever, then you need to copy it from there. So let's turn this on. And now let's see if our button is happy. Okay, it seems to be happy. Let's change the color. We can do whatever, green, blue, as you prefer. Let's publish the changes. And then let's click on this create final post content while this one is running. Okay, so if you were too slow, you can make this run and click on the button once again, but you see it's still in progress. So it should trigger this event here that we got our record ID. All right, and now we can do a few things. So what is it that we want to achieve? Well, basically we want to have this final content, and you see I already have it. That's because I recorded this yesterday, and then something urgent happened, and also my recording didn't work properly. But coming back to, that's what we want to achieve. So this is the stuff that we want to build. And in order to achieve that, we are going to build out the automation. And the automation is going to look something like this in the end, even though I'm going to simplify it. So we're going to see a few things here, and we're going to focus on the top branch here. The bottom branch is not necessary if we just say we always include the image. Okay, we're going to keep it simple. We're always going to include the image. And also something that is optional is going to be this part here, because you need to set up a separate account in order to make this work. So HCTI, which is there to create a preview image, which is pretty useful, but you don't have to have it. I just really like having it because it then generates this preview image here, which gives you an idea as to what the post would then look like. This is the preview for the raw content. So let's set all of that up. Therefore, we're going to need Airtable, and we need to get a record based on our blog post connection here. Then we need to select the blog automation as well as block content table. All right. And here we're just going to pass the record ID in. So the next thing that we will need is to get ChatGPT to do some completion for us. So we're going to create a completion, and I'm going to use the latest ChatGPT 4.0 here. And I'm going to have two different messages, one for the role of developer / system. So it's going to be, you're an experienced writer with a skill for creating highly engaging posts, blog posts that capture the attention of your audience and deliver value. Please use personal tone writing from the first person perspective and use I instead of we throughout the article. So this is where you can obviously adjust what you want the post to look like or what you want the style to be. And then we're going to need another message. So this will just be the system prompt. Now we need to have the user prompt. So there we go, user text content, and I'm going to throw it like this. So I'm going to say use the topic of article name, which we get from our Airtable getter record. So it used to be 2 for me, but now as I had this automation before, it will be 9 for me now. So here I need to pass the summary. Here I need to pass the keywords. Further down, I'm going to pass the long tail keywords. All right. So I pass all the information that we have in our database. So if you recall, we got all of these details in here in blog content. We got the keywords, right? We got the summary, and we got the long tail keywords. And we pass all of this information to our blog entry here. And then we parse the text so that we only get it in a clean format. So here, text parser, match pattern advanced. Here we're going to say global matches, not case sensitive. It's going to be multiple lines. And we're just going to use this markdown pattern. And as the text, we're going to take the result of this ChatGPT module. So this will basically just clean it up. So if you look at this OpenAI text, we are telling it that it should give it surrounded by markdown. And then the output will be surrounded by markdown. And what we want to have is whatever is inside of markdown. So we say it somewhere here, like give it as a markdown text, and then it will just do that for us. So then I can take the output of this text parser and create an HTML out of it. So markdown to HTML. And the markdown is going to be the value that I get from my text parser here. So this one will give me the markdown. And then I convert that into HTML. And then I use that HTML in ChatGPT. So I'm going to select ChatGPT here again. And again, I'm going to use the GPT-4o model. Now, obviously, you can use a different model if you want to, but I'm just using that because it's consistent and it just works. All right. Sometimes it's just okay to just use something that works. And then regarding the message, you use user here and it will say you will be given a HTML code and an image. All you need to do is embed the image in the first h1 tag. Do not modify anything else in the code. The output should contain only the code and the code should not start with HTML. And then where do we get the data from? We get the data here. Well, this is not the data. We actually want to have the HTML code from our markdown and the image URL from our data here. So image 1 and URL. So this is what we want from our Airtable getter record module. All right. So from this one here. All right. Now that we have that, we have two ways. So the thing is, like, you could have left this out. And you can also leave out the next thing if you don't want to generate the image preview. So I'm going to, however, do that. I'm going to create an image with HTML CSS. I'm going to get the HTML from our ChatGPT number 13. So this one here, where it says 13 results, right? And then I'm going to surround that with a little bit of code. So I'm going to put on top of it, I'm going to put this code here. And underneath, I'm going to put this code here. So this is just HTML code, which just surrounds it with HTML and puts everything into the body of the HTML tag. All right. And then we can save that. And finally, we can store all of it inside of Airtable. So here we're going to update a record. And what is it that we want to update? Well, in our blog automation, in blog contents, we want to set up a few things. So the record ID for it will be the one that we get from our webhook. So nothing changing there. Then the status, we're going to turn off map and we're going to set up create WP post. It's going to be the next status. So pending create WP post. Then regarding the final content, it will be the value from our text parser. And then as the blog post HTML, I'm just going to use my result of my 13 ChatGPT. Okay. And then we just have a preview blog item. So this will be an image, which we get from our image URL, which will be this one here. And the file name, I'm just going to use recordid.png. So what is going on here? Well, the only thing that I think you will be wondering is this part here. I hope that that's the only thing that is confusing to you. So we have, and let me save that. We have this field here, down here, called preview raw content. And this is where we are setting up this image. Okay. So this image has the name of the record ID, and we are basically just storing it in our database in here at this point. Okay. So the preview block, we set it up as an image because it is of type image. We need to give it a URL where the image is residing, and we need to give it a name. So that's what we're doing. So let's save this and let's run it once and see if this is going to work for our post. Well, I have it here already. So I'm going to just do the following because my other automations are already running. Let me just set up a new idea and do the entire flow once again. All right. So first we create a new idea. There we are. We got our idea. Now let's say we like the idea. This will then generate a new idea and blog content. There we are. New blog content was generated. Now let's generate the content structure. I'm not going to screw up. I'm not going to screw you. I like that. Yeah. So we will need to change that potentially. So this was just for demonstration purposes. We could obviously get rid of that as well. So now we're generating the content structure, which takes a little longer because, well, it's a more complex status, more complex automation, right? Once the content status is there, content structure, we can generate the image. So this triggers the image generation. And then we can create final post content. So now you might say, Dennis, I don't have this include image thing anymore. Well, I don't need it because we're never actually using it. So you could get rid of this inside of your setup. Well, inside of edit pages, you could get rid of it because in the end, if you look at it, we are not really doing anything with it. So we're always just using the image. Okay. So this automation should be triggered when we click on this create final post, and let's see why it didn't do that yet. Maybe it's because I didn't click it. So let's click it in progress. And then there we are. So it goes through the process, it gets the record, it creates the HTML code, and then, well, creates the markdown code, the text, so to speak. ChatGPT creates the text. Now you could let ChatGPT create HTML directly as well. It does work, but often it just breaks something, which is why we have this markdown to HTML. But if you can make it work without it, if you prompt it right, it can work, but still, like, ChatGPT is not super consistent sometimes. So that's why we're doing this markdown to HTML. Okay, so we got an error here. Operation, insufficient permission to create a new select option. Okay, so it seems like we got a very long input here, or very bad input. Something must have gone wrong here. Let me check. And that is because I set include image as the value. It should have been the final content. Ugh. Yeah, there we are. So let's save that and let's run it again. So that's what happens if you run into this. I don't cut it out because I think this could happen to you as well. So when you are sending it into the wrong field, then it obviously doesn't make sense. So if it expects a URL, but you're giving it a boatload of text, that could run into or generate issues for you. Now, if you're wondering what this HCTI API is, well, you can check it out, HCTI API, and it's this one here, which is pretty cool. So it's a tool that allows you to generate HTML into an image, and you can get an API key for free, which is pretty cool as well. So I recommend checking it out if this is something you want to use. And I use it in other examples as well. So now we see the automation run through. We got our text. Very nice. We got all the emojis, as ChatGPT loves to use those. Pretty long text, and we got the preview. Perfect. So this automation works. Now we just need to create a post draft and publish the post. So these are the easier ones, okay? These are the simpler ones. Obviously, you will need a WordPress blog access for that. So let's set up those next. And before we do that, let's really make sure that we save this automation. We turn it on immediately to run whenever a new stuff comes in. And now let's go ahead and set up a new scenario here. And scenario number 5 is going to be creating the blog draft or a blog post draft. So I'm going to give it the name straight away, and it should be YouTube here. Then I'm going to use a webhook once again. For some reason it doesn't work, so let me save that. Let's refresh this page and go in again if that happens. So let's create a new webhook here. I'm going to call this one create WordPress draft. Okay, let's save that webhook. Well, we can copy it and we can go through setting up this button. So again, edit pages, right? Then we scroll all the way down and we want to modify this button right here. So it needs an automation, which means we need to set up a new automation. And this new automation, we can give it a proper name. I'm going to call it create post draft or create draft or something like that. Create draft is going to be good enough. Now we can go over and select create draft as the automation. Obviously it won't do anything yet. Let's also change the color. I'm going to change the button color to green. And then we can say when a button is clicked, you will see it will be automatically selected here correctly, and then run script. And here I'm going to add the webhook URL because I have it available in copy and paste, right? Otherwise you can copy it from here again, and then you can paste it in here. Then we will need the other code as always, right? Same procedure as every year. James, was it James? So also make sure that you have the names right. So here it needs to be written exactly as you have written it here. Webhook URL, you could be written in capital letters or RL2, so whatever you prefer. Then let's select Airtable record ID once again, as always. and finish editing, turn on this automation, and then turn on this automation as well to see if it works. And then let's publish the changes and click on this create draft button just to see if it's going to do anything, because we need to get the ID of the post that we want to publish. There we are. We got our post ID. Perfect. So now we just need to set up our Airtable to get the record. And here we need to select the right connection, blog post connection and blog automation, as well as blog content and the record ID, like so. Save that. And this will give us the entire blog details. And now we can use WordPress. So here's WordPress, and I'm going to say create a post. Okay. So this will create a post. Now you need to set up a WordPress connection. How does that work? Well, you need to go over to your WordPress blog. All right, let me show you that. Then go into your dashboard in your back end of your WordPress. Then you go to plugins, and that's where you need to find the make plugin. Okay, so you need to install a new plugin. And the one that I am using here is this make connector. Okay, so you can go ahead and add new plugins or plugin and search for make connector, and then you will find this one right here. You need to install it, activate it, and once it's installed and activated, you'll need to go to your make settings and get your API key from here, copy that and paste that in here, and then also use your own URL /wp-json. So in my case, it's https://tutorials.eu/ and then I think it's wp-json. Okay, so that's what you need to enter here. You can see that here, your site.com/wp-json, then your API key that you got from WordPress that I just showed you, and then you save that connection, and then you got your WordPress connection. And at that point, you can pass all the information that you need to the blog post. Okay, so you can pass the title in, the content itself, and so forth. So let's go over to title. We get that from our Airtable here, and it should be title. Where is that? We have so many things that we are storing in the database, huh? Well, I called title article name, so let's use that. As content, we are going to use blog post HTML, this one here. As type, we are going to create post. Now, obviously, you can also create pages and so forth. I'm just going to create a post out of it. And then you can select what categories you want to use. If you don't select any tags or any categories here, it will be automatically selecting the the default, which is general, I believe. And then as author, you can select the different authors that you have in your WordPress. And otherwise, it's just going to assume that the admin is going to be the author. So this is an optional field, but you can set it up. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to update my Airtable record because I want to say that the status has changed. And that's really the main thing that I want to do here. And misclicking sucks. So again, we need to select our blog automation v1, our blog content, the record ID that we get from our webhook, and then the status is what I want to change from what we had before to pending post publication. Okay, and everything else, well, we can give it a post ID, which, well, we need to store the post ID. That's important because we need to know the post ID in order to then publish the post later on. Okay. So here I'm creating the post with the post ID and I'm saving that. And now you can, at this point, if you want to, also directly publish the post. So here we're creating and then we're publishing, but I have this separate button where I can then publish the post from here. Now, as I said, this automation is up to you as you prefer. So I'm just going to save it as is. I'm going to run it once and see if it's actually going to create a post inside of my database. So let's click on this create post draft, and it should create this post called building a fully automated workflow, how to connect Airtable. So let me check inside of my posts here. And what did we say? Building a fully automated workflow. So did the automation run? Seems like it didn't run. Let me check if we stored our automation here correctly. Create draft. This is the, well, it did run. Okay, it took a little while, but then finally it did run. So now let's check whether the post was created. And here, build a fully automated workflow. It's 9:51. Perfect. So that's our post that was generated for us. Here we got the image, and then we can basically see the entire article being prepared for us inside of WordPress. And now we just need to publish it. Okay. So I'm going to activate this to run immediately once something happens. So as I said, the next step is really up to you how you want to do it. This is something you could obviously also leave out, where you do the publishing itself inside of WordPress straight away. So here you could obviously make some changes still. You could make this whatever, like AI automation. There's a new category, AI automation, for example, as a category. And then you can add tags. You can make all the changes to your WordPress thingy, right? Change the SEO stuff if you wanted to. And then finally, you could publish it from here, okay? But we're going to publish with our automation because we want to do automations, right? And that's what we're going to do next. All right, so I'm giving it a proper name. Then I love it, right? If you change the name before you added an item, you cannot modify it. So yeah, I need to refresh the page. So you need to create an item before you do all of that fun stuff. So I'm going to use a webhook again, as always. I'm going to call this one post on WP on WordPress. We can copy that. We can go over here. We want to modify this publish post thingy, right? So let's edit the pages. Let's go all the way down. This is the automation, well, where we want to set up the automation. So let's create a new automation. So I think by this time you got it, right? Like this is the same approach every single time when we're working with interfaces. I think you got the idea now. So now that we have this automation, we can select it here. So automation 1, now let's rename it, post on WP, for example. Then we want to run some script logic. And here we want to have your webhook URL, and it will be our webhook URL. Then we have our record ID. It will be the record ID. And then we need our default code that we use ever so often. There we are. So let's finish this. Let's turn this on. Well, you can obviously test the automation from here as well, but well, we got it here. So let's be done with it. See if the change has worked. There we are. We have this publish post button. Now let's save this. Let's run it once. Go over here, publish the post, see if the webhook is triggered. There we are. Our webhook is triggered. Now we can go ahead and get the post. So we need to get a record with the ID that we wanted to. So here base, and then block automation v1, table block content, record ID that we get from our webhook. Then we can use WordPress to update the post. And here we will need to give it the post ID. Okay. So first of all, the type, it's going to be a post. Then the post ID, that's what we get from our Airtable, where it's the WP post ID. Where are you, Mr. Post ID? There we are, WP post ID. And then the thing that we want to change is the status. So we want to change the status from draft to publish. That's what we do. Now, obviously, you can also change categories and tags from here as well, make all the changes, change the author again, and so forth. And once we're done with that, we just need to update our Airtable so that it knows what the status of our post is. And that's pretty much it, right? So we just select the blog post automation here, the blog content, the record ID, once it's there, which is this one right here. And then we want to change the status to your blog is live or your blog post is live. Maybe that would be a better name. Let me check if we need to have anything else. Well, we want to change the WP post status here as well to published. So this is one that we store internally as well. So once we save that and we save our automation, never forget that. Let's run this. Well, we could run it once to check. So let's run it once and let's click on the publish post. And if it worked, we will see the WP post status here as published. And we will also see the post as published inside of WordPress. All right, it says published. Let me see if the post is published. Let's refresh and we see the status has changed to published. Now the post will be publicly available, that we are building a fully automated workflow, how to connect Airtable and make for seamless AI powered stuff. Very good. So there we are. That would be our entire automation. So we did a lot of things and you learned a lot of things along the way, I hope. And something that I would love you to do next is, if you haven't done that already, join the AI automation specialist community. All right. So I have showed you this before, but yeah, join our community. It's really great. You're going to learn so much stuff. You're going to learn AI automation from scratch. If you are lacking in that, I think that's not a problem for you if you manage to do all of the video, all the stuff that we did in this video. And then you get a lot of other really useful automations here. So these are in-depth templates with videos where you get access to the resources, which I don't make available on YouTube. So that saves you loads of time where you don't have to manually set everything up. You can really just download the resources and go from there. Okay, so that would be that. And also we have a weekly call. So here you can ask your questions, you can get help whenever you are stuck, and you can also get business advice. I'm running businesses since 10 years roughly. So yeah, I have a lot of like experience and knowledge that I gained over the time, and I can help you with that as well. Obviously I'm an AI pro, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do that stuff. So I can also help you with AI, Gen AI stuff, and help you stay up in the game. All right. So thanks a lot for watching this video. This was a long one, but I wanted to show you really everything from scratch, and I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know what you think about these kind of videos, because very often I'm really just showing how the automation is working and not so much building it out with you. But this time I decided to really build it out. So I hope you enjoyed that, and make sure to subscribe, because I'm uploading an Airtable interfaces masterclass very soon as well, or like content for it in the future. And the masterclass will probably only be available in the school itself, but some of the videos will also reach YouTube. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next one.